Good morning. I wanted to go back to the Dewi Evans Talk TV interview and start going over that again. It will cross over with some of the stuff we've covered in the other videos recently, but still there's just so much in all these, and I think it all bears repetition all the time and constant digging in to what they're saying. The purpose of, I was thinking this more, what's the point of doing these videos? Well, it is to analyse what people are saying and really what further questions can come out of that, what can be discovered from it. Like the idea of the fact of the email being sent. I don't know how we're going to find out the date of it, but we need to find out the date of it. And then if it's the 18th of May 2017 or beyond, then discount it. That's it. As long as we can rely that the report of that is correct. And that's the trouble when you're dealing with corrupt systems. Then anything's possible. So back to the Talk TV interview that Dewi Evans gives at 3:10. Quote from him: "Since 2013." Sorry about the coughing, I can't help it. "Since 2013, I've been involved in a couple of dozen cases for police authorities via the National Crime Agency." But he's saying this in an interview in 2023. The thing about him, he constantly does it, is slippering us with time. So is he saying he's been involved in a couple of dozen cases looking back from the position of 2023? Or from back into 2017, 6 years before, when he's on that case? I mean, he's probably done a few of them then, but what time period does it, what time point does it apply to when he says how many cases he's been involved in? So my name was well known to them. Okay, so he's on this database, apparently. Well, I don't know if he's on the database, because D.S. Kennedy says they contact the National Crime Agency, and she says, oh, they've got a list, or database, and then they've got all the experts on them. But Dewi Evans says, I was well known to them. Is that the same as being on the database? Well, maybe it is. Maybe I'm overthinking that. It's just the idea that, was he on the actual official database, and did he get added to it by of his own volition, his insertion into the case by ringing them up, and then become on the database, and then around the same time, or at the same time, Chester Police ring the NCA and say, we've got this case with babies, have you got any experts on your database that would be suited to this? Someone who had been a paediatrician, maybe. I don't know if they'd have said all that even, but who's suitable? And then Evans says, it was I thought this was a case I was suited to, so I thought it was my kind of case. So he was really eager to get involved. I don't know if there are any other reasons he was eager to get involved specifically. Yeah, it's his business. He's got his consultancy going and he's trying to make money out of it. But are there other reasons based on what he knew already? There's two parts to this, as we went over in the other video. I don't know if he could have known about the rise in deaths across 2015, 2016 at Chester Hospital. He could have known about it through the publication of the RCPCH report about that hospital and the fact it had been downgraded in July 2016. He could have heard it on the grapevine, but he could have heard it much more specifically through someone from that hospital or via an intermediary from someone at that hospital, and possibly from one of those consultants. And that's the link to establish, if there was any way to establish that, if anyone would come forward to say that was possible or could show the link via an email, via Well, I suppose an email would be the way. You can't, if it's a phone call, it's gone, isn't it? A letter or an email, something like that. Some record of a meeting or connection between any one of those consultants, the Gang of Four, and Evans, prior to May 2017 when the police are brought in. Evans talked about the smoking gun. Well, that's the smoking gun for him. And the smoking gun of being told early in May, earlier than the 18th in May, when he says he'd read about it in the newspapers, that he'd heard that police were involved right from the beginning of May, or maybe the first week of May. It's such a, I'm repeating, I probably am repeating, but it's such a tight window that he reads about police involvement on the 18th of May, and does he ring them straight away? Straight off the back of that? Maybe, because he's eager and he wants to get business. He is touting for business, isn't he? He is. Let's face it, he denied it, but no, that's exactly what he's doing. He wants the job. Okay, he wants the job. But as, there's this bank holiday coming up in May, and it's a tight window for him to get connected to it, but it isn't impossible. And also, it's not just about that he read about the rise in deaths necessarily in the RCPCH report published in November 2016. It's that something's been going on there. Things have been brewing and going very dark there for the best part of 2 years. You've got Breary orders the review into the deaths in June 2015. That could have been on the Bush Telegraph on the. It's he might have picked that up at any point throughout 2015 and throughout the whole of 2016 that things are going, that there's a group of consultants there in the same line of work as he used to be in for 30 years, and he's heard about it either directly from them or through some kind of intermediary or just someone else who's heard about it, and it's just becoming this common knowledge thing that you've got a group of doctors locked in this battle with. Because they're not publishing it in newspaper reports, but they got their own networks. They know each other. They're doing the same job, and Dewi Evans that was his job. That was his livelihood. They've got these networks, and they talk, and they have conferences, and they know each other from the past. There's all kinds of meetings that are possible, or phone calls, or emails, or letters. He had a long, long time to potentially pick up the rumours and the targeting of Lucy Letby. Because what are those consultants saying? Are they all keeping it all to themselves? No, they're not. They're trying to broadcast it. They're trying to promulgate and broadcast their concerns that there's a dangerousness on the ward and management won't listen to them. You can well imagine that they would try to get that message out far and wide. They're not shy about it. So somebody like Dewi Evans could have come across that. May well have come across that. If he's come across it, when he says, I didn't know, I'd never heard of Lucy Letby's name, I just don't believe him. I don't believe him. He's had it from some source. He's aware that there's a nurse that is in the sights of four consultants at Chester Hospital at some point. He might have known it a year before. He might have known it 6 months before. Let's even say he didn't even know that, but I think the police let him know that the nurse is off the ward. He's lied in a statement where he says all the police had. There's another statement of him, a quote. He said all the police had was that there were these increased deaths, mysterious deaths. They didn't know anything about any suspect, but the police tell us in the Hummingbird video that they knew the name from day one, Lucy Letby, and they even considered arresting her, but knew it wasn't the best thing to do for the investigation, and they knew that she had been taken off the ward and that all the deaths had stopped. They knew all that from day one, and yet Dewi Evans, in one of his when he runs his mouth, he says, well, the police had nothing other than there was a bit of a query about this increased numbers of deaths, and they didn't know it, they didn't have any suspects. Dewi Evans knew that the police had a suspect. They knew it, he knew that. And I believe they would have related that information to him. Even if it's not the name, it's at least there's a nurse no longer there that somebody is suspecting. So what Dewi Evans has said he's doing is, he said he's taking a clinical approach to find out if there's any crimes at all. But he's not. I described this in a tweet as a sort of a triumvirate operation between the gang of four doctors. The gang of four doctors, Dewi Evans and the police. They're all about pretend. They've got Lucy Letby in their sights from the beginning, at whatever point they come in. The consultants have got her in their sights, and they have had for the best part of 2 years. The police come in, the police have got her in their sights. Dewi Evans comes in. I think he knows something from before. He's got her in his sights. And they're all pretending, it's all a game, to pretend as though they've got this open, we don't know anything, we're just going to do this open investigation, and it could be the a bad bug in the water, like Detective Hughes says. It's just all pretense. It's ridiculous. The level of pretense for him to say that in that interview, it could be a bad bug in the water, and the experts are going to find it out. Well, did the experts do any testing in the water retrospectively from 2 years ago to know? They wouldn't have had a clue, would they? Didn't know what's going on all that time. I mean, it's just simply a lie that... I hope it's coming across what I'm saying. It's a massive pretense after the event that they've run an open investigation. But what they've done is they've got their suspect and they never let go. Any of those three elements, never let go while pretending that it could be anybody and anything. Hughes says he's gonna... You can't do that. You can't pretend it's just one person or one thing. Otherwise, the defence will attack you in the court. He's got to give the show of pretending it could be anything or anyone. The show of it, so he can't be attacked in court. So the case can't be attacked. But the reality is, underneath that, it's those particular events that they attach to Lucy Letby, those crashes and those deaths, and it's her and no one else, and it's never anything else, and it's never anyone else from all three of them. And it's just a charade. That's the word. It's a charade. And he reveals it. Hughes reveals it. Evans reveals it in his lying, saying that the police didn't have anything, didn't have any names, didn't know who it was, just thought, there's some mysterious deaths here. We've just got to make sure that there's nothing bad going on. Anyway. 3 minutes 53 in the Talk TV interview with Dewi Evans. Right, I got involved in May 2017. We need to know the date. We need to know all the dates, not just the month. And what I told Chester Police was that if they suspected anyone, I did not want to know about this. Don't believe him. In other words, I wanted to investigate the cause of the collapse or the cause of the death of these babies. He stumbles there. I'm not saying I'm not a statement analyst or anything, but there's some tension there. He's stumbling. And he goes on to say, I was not there to investigate the crime. And there's this slippery thing with time again, because at that point in time, there is no the crime, is there? Not supposed to be. It's supposed to be to get to the bottom of... he's giving himself away there, isn't he? There's supposed to be an open investigation as to whether there is any crime, or is it a bad bug in the water, as Hughes says. So I'm not there to investigate the crime. Now, this is partly the slipperiness of his language that he now believes and thinks, and it's in the court, there's a crime now and it's been convicted. But he's pushing that back. Again, he does that. He's pushing it back into the past. But I think it's more than that. I think he thought it was a crime then because the doctors thought it was a crime, because the police think it was a crime then. Not after, and because of all the reports he did, but then at the beginning. They all believe it's a crime from the beginning. Hughes doesn't think it's a bad bug in the water. That's all theatre, all charade. After the event, to show it, he led a fair and open investigation. It's absolute bollocks. Excuse my French. Absolute bollocks. It's just hideous to watch. And to finish off that quote, he says, "And at that time, I was unaware of the name of Lucy Letby or anyone else." I don't believe him. Or anyone else. What does that mean? It's just don't believe him. There's something very suspicious in the phrasing of that, I find. So, what does he say here? At that time. So what does at that time mean? The very first day he turns up? I still don't believe him. But anyway, let's say he's talking about the period of the report writing once he's seen the medical notes, which is after July, according to the police. That's when the police get these bundles together. They have a meeting with their expert, in the singular, despite them saying they've got 8 experts and an independent nurse witness. Independent nurse advisor. That's the phrase. So 9 people, but they have a meeting with singular expert, your man Evans, in July. So if that time, when he says at that time, Evans, in this quote, applies to when he's doing the reports, and I wasn't unaware of it, but he's reading her name all the way through it. And then, what is he going to be most focused on? Well, the cases where he's saying there's something gone wrong. And what is he seeing all the way through that case? Who's the main nurse he's seeing all the way through those cases that he's decided is a crime? He's decided is suspicious, unexpected and unexplained. What name is he seeing of the nurses all the way through? Thousands of times. Either the initials or the name. It's Lucy Letby. It's there in the records all the time. I probably said all this before, but he keeps revealing in this interview about management. They've got too much control. They're shabby. They put across these terrible notes. It's all going. The consultants are the ones we need to champion here. We need to vindicate them. That's his position. Evans's. We need to protect these honourable doctors, these wise and honourable doctors, up against the management. They can see that a nurse is harming babies, and the management won't do anything about it. They're covering it up. We'll see later in other quotes. He's using the word cover up, and he goes much further even. He goes much, much further, and even the journalist from Talk TV has to step in there, because he goes so far. Later on, I'll do another video about it. He goes so far with his statement. It's absolutely outrageous, and it reveals what kind of scumbag this guy is. It reveals what kind of scumbag Evans is. Get quite angry about it. He was a hitman for this job. He was a gun for hire. Without Evans, Lucy may have hopefully left that unit because it was cursed. It was a cursed place. She was trying to do her very best there. She was reporting doctors' mistakes when other nurses wouldn't dare do it. She was an honourable. She is an honourable and dedicated nurse, but they destroyed that. They destroyed the best nurse there. Not the mediocre one, not the worst one, not the one that didn't really care, not the one who's waiting to retire or is kind of jaded. They destroyed the best one, the one that took them to task. The consultants now, they destroyed the best nurse. They focused on the best nurse to destroy, because they were making errors all the time, because they knew that they didn't have the capacity, they didn't have the staffing to run a level 2 unit, and all that was stated in the RCPCH report, that They weren't meeting the necessary staffing targets to run that kind of unit, and there are all kinds of other issues with the layout, the crampedness, etc., etc. And they had a sepsis problem there, and we can get onto that. Got to start looking at all that kind of stuff as well. Thanks anyway. I think I'll leave it there. Cheers. Thank you. I'm just watching the other section that I recorded back, and I might have given the wrong impression. The wrong impression that I'm saying that the consultants were spreading far and wide their suspicions about Lucy Letby. Now, I don't mean by that they were writing to the newspaper. I don't mean that they obviously didn't ring the police or write to the newspaper. I'm talking about these networks, these medical networks that are obviously always there, and the Bush Telegraph and people's rumours that go around hospitals and between hospitals, between trusts and within the trust, the NHS trust. That's the spreading of the rumour. That's the spreading of the rumour. Within that hospital, that would have become rumour all through the hospital. Yes, they're saying they're trying to deal with it internally by going to the nurse, to the head, to Karen Rees, the head of nursing. But it's getting out. It's getting out. There comes a point in time where they stop allowing Lucy Letby to work nights because they say there's more people to keep an eye on her. And she was somebody who used to pick up a lot of night shifts because she would fill in because she's very dedicated and wanted to help and was concerned for these babies being left alone in a very short-staffed, understaffed, chaotic unit with a lot of doctors making a lot of mistakes and covering them up. So I'm not talking about that they were spreading it far and wide and telling the milkman and going down the road and shouting it and going to Wetherspoons and talking about it there. I'm talking about the medical network, which Evans is a part of. He's a retired paediatrician, but he's part of the medical network because he's in and out of these different places all the time. I'm not saying he's visiting that hospital all the time, but he's in and out of the network all the time. He's got his ear to the ground. He's waiting and looking and wondering if there's going to be some cases he can be involved in terms of medical negligence. He's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on in hospitals, especially, this is the northwest. It's not that far from Wales, is just over there to the left a bit. So he's in Carmarthen. I actually found a website which was to do with the neonatal transport. They have all kinds of meetings and conference in order to, like neonates being transported from level 2 to level 3 units when they need more care, things like that. And they're constantly having meetings. And the point of me saying this now is that the website it's the Northwest and North Wales. So there's this linkage about areas which will include that Northwest and parts of Wales. So there, you've got all the potentials there for him to pick up the information. It's rumour, and it carries a long way in certain professions, doesn't it? Especially to get to the ears of someone who actually sees that as a business opportunity. Evan sees it as a business opportunity that somebody might be harming a child within a hospital setting. So I just wanted to say that might have come across like I'm saying I know that they were talking to people. No, it's within that world. It's within that medical world and those medical networks. Cheers.